Hi everybody, Steve Alkinator. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we begin a new topic, and this topic has to do with models of learning. There are a whole slew of them out there. I thought we'd spend some time looking at the four I've put up on the screen. So Gregoric, HBDI, Herman Brain Dominance. VAK is based on NLP, so Visual Auditory Kinesthetic Learning. I have no idea what form MAT is, but it seemed to be a very popular one. And I'm more than happy to add any other models of learning that you guys may hold near and dear to your own experiences. So by all means, just let me know whatever it is that you'd like me to kind of add to the list. Getting kind of a funny little reflection on someone's line. So if you guys would go ahead and mute and then just unmute if you want to chime something in, that would be really good. Oh, thank you. All right, so now I'm hoping Edie joins in because I think Edie is one of our team members who has a lot of experience with the Gregoric. So are any of you guys familiar with this model or fluent in the model, ideally?
Nope.
Okay, well then we'll all just be the blind leading the blind. I did find a website called the Peak Performance Center. I don't know anything about these people, but I will tell you they've put forth a list, a very simple list of different learning models, and I thought we'd use their document as the kind of foundation for what we're doing. So let me go ahead and go to peakperformancecenter.com. You guys can do that locally if you prefer. Oops, helps if you spell it correctly. Funny thing about the internet.
It does work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't it though? It's like you'd think we'd have technology above and beyond that. Now that just took me to the regular home page. I'm trying to find learning. This seems to be about sports performance. How did I end up? Okay. Oh, it's the peak performance. That the is very important. Otherwise, you're going to end up at a baseball camp. All right, here it comes in. Wonderful. I'll slide this in. We can take a look at it. No, I don't want to do any of that stuff. Thank you so much, though. Now, I just took you guys to the general website. I do want to find the specific stuff they have about learning. So give me just a second while I find educational learning. Models of learning. Let's click on here. No, I don't want that. Learning, our learning section. Oh, good grief. Just give me half of a jiffy. So we're going to go models of learning. Yep. It's very strange because I was taken specifically to this website. Here it is. So we'll slide this one in. We'll get rid of this one. And so these are, no, thanks. So that is one thing about their website. It's filled with promoted ads. And that's, you just kind of have to deal with that. But they were talking about these different learning styles, and each one of these is clickable, and it goes into obviously far more detail about each one of these. And I thought you don't need to work through every one of them, but if you guys are familiar with one of these or want to explore one of these, we can certainly do it. I know I've heard of, is it COB? I know I've heard of that one before. Certainly we know Herman Brain Dominance. We know the basics about left brain and right brain preferences. I did not think of Myers-Briggs as being a learning model, but I'm happy to take a look and see what they have to say about that. The one I wanted to begin with, why is Fleming up here all of a sudden? I wanted to go with this Gregoric model. No, thanks though, really do appreciate it. Wish I could help you out. So Gregoric basically says that there are two different dimensions that we're going to look at, and that is that you have a preference for the way that you perceive information, and you have a preference for the way that you order things. And so your perceptual preferences can either be concrete or abstract, and your ordering preferences can either be sequential, linear, or random, nonlinear. And it creates this lovely little chart here that we can see if it's going to overlay on the change grid. Let me go back to my little document for just a second, because I get a little bit of a summary about each one of these. So let me slide this out of the way, and I'll tell you a little bit about the 4 possibilities. Now, by the way, there are many free tests online that you can figure out what you are, but they tend to be quite long. 70 some odd plus questions in order to really identify which preference you might actually hold. But concrete sequential. So a concrete sequential learner likes something that is based on solid sorts of things, and they like things to be in a very logical, predictable kind of an order. So this learner likes order, logical sequence, following directions, predictability, and getting facts. They learn best when they have a structured environment. They can rely on others to complete the task. They are faced with predictable situations, and they can apply ideas in pragmatic ways. Now, without me telling you guys anything else, what energy do you think a concrete sequential right now is kind of resonating with? So amiable, analytical, driver, expressive, which one do you think this feels like it is so far? Somebody unmute, throw in your 2 cents. Yes, David.
T, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so when you think about what the concrete sequential likes, logic, order, predictability, getting facts, a structured environment, those kinds of things, does this feel like it resonates more with an amiable, an analytical, a driver, or an expressive general energy? Feels quite analytical at this point in time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys agree? Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
if we look a little bit deeper about what's hard for them, let's see if this is also true, because we would say, hey, for an analytical, this stuff in general should also be rather hard. So working in groups, discussions that seem to have no specific point. As an analytical, I can tell you that resonates with me. Working in an unorganized environment. That's interesting. Following incomplete or unclear instructions. Working with unpredictable people. Heck yeah. Dealing with abstract ideas. Demands on use your imagination. Demands to use your imagination, and questions with no right or wrong answers. So as you went through this list of things that are hard for concrete sequentials, and thinking that this may resonate with an analytical energy, I'm thinking in my personal experience as being more of an analytical type, some of these do resonate with me as being difficult, and others not so much. So I wonder if this would be a profound analytical versus someone who is, let's just go to another little layer here for just a second. Oh, I didn't copy it. If we look at just the quadrants, actually, I shouldn't have to do this with you guys. I should just be able to take a composite change grid and slap it up. You guys should know what we're talking about. So when I'm talking about this concrete sequential very much resonating with analytical, stop trying to help me. It's all would be very much in this down grid area of the change grid. But when I think of myself, I don't mind sharing with you that I don't need to have a completely organized environment. You should see my desk. So my desk is chaos, but I'm all right with that. So that's not really that. Following incomplete or unclear instructions, you know, maybe it's more of a guy thing than a concrete sequential thing, but I find no greater joy in life than buying something that says assembly required and then putting it together without using the instructions and having parts left over. You know what I mean? I consider instructions to be a suggestion about how to do things, whether I'm you know, cooking something or assembling something or figuring something out. I'm not as what's my word? I don't feel like I need to be so confined to somebody else's idea of instructions. Working with unpredictable people, it's amazing if you slap them hard enough, they really do become more predictable. Dealing with abstract ideas, I actually do enjoy. Demands to use my imagination. I think my imagination is always in play. And questions with no right or wrong answers, I'm very happy with infinite shades of gray. So I wonder, as I think of myself, maybe I'm more of a, let's come out here again, we're still in the analytical quadrant. Maybe I'm more of an expressive analytical.
I think you are, T.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
this is,
I do because, even though you could exist on a desert island, I do believe, but you enjoy interaction. You enjoy learning about people or new things.
yeah.
So I think you have some of that expressive energy.
Yeah, I do. And I know that this area, the change grid, is also the home of kind of natural creativity or artistic creativity. Art, well done art follows rules, no mistake about it. But the rules are just considered to be general guidelines and suggestions about how a particular medium can best be used. I mean, if I'm an analytical architect, why do I expect all of my buildings are going to look alike? Where if I'm an expressive analytical architect, I might be more likely to give you something unique and interesting, right? So even though architecture as a career is probably best done by people that are analytical because no one wants their buildings to fall down, um, I think that if we look at these subtleties and the four sub-energies down here, you can kind of go, who do you want designing your house? Who do you want doing your taxes? So I don't know that I want an expressive analytical doing my taxes. So, and I don't know that I want an analytical doing my taxes. Who do you want to have doing your taxes? So your other choices are the amiable or the driven.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I want a driven
No,
analytical. Yeah,
right. A driven analytical. There you go.
yeah. Because what are they going to do? They're
They're
they're,
going
they're
to try
definitely
and
an
push for
accountant.
an outcome, but they're going to do it based on the data.
That's right. And so I think that a driven analytical in the realm of a tax accountant or whatever is going to be looking for every cost savings measure they can, or tax savings measure they can within the confines of the law. And we all know that our tax law is so complicated that probably no one actually is fluent in the whole thing. So there's plenty of legal loopholes to be going looking for to save you a few bucks. So to me, that would be very much the domain of the driven analytical. I would be afraid to have an expressive analytical do my taxes because that level of creativity could get us all in trouble.
They keep calling you.
Yeah, right. Oh, Edie's joining us. Excellent. Hey, Edie, we're talking about Gregoric. So we're having a little bit of fun right now. So
Cool.
we've been talking about right now that this concrete sequential, it feels very analytical and probably an analytical, very far down grid. So let's see if the pattern continues. Let's go with the abstract sequential. This learner likes to have his or her point to be heard, analyzing situations before making a decision or acting, applying logic in solving or finding solutions to problems. They learn best when they have access to experts or references. They're placed in stimulating environments and they are able to work alone. So far, does this still feel like this is very much an analytical kind of an energy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what variation on the analytical? So what's
More of
hard
a
for you?
driver behavior, it seems like.
Let's figure that out because I saw a couple of things I thought maybe that's more of a driver analytical. Maybe it's the expressive. So let's kind of take a look at these, what they don't like, and see if that points them in a direction. So being forced to work with those of differing views. That made me lean driver. Too little time to deal with a subject thoroughly.
Driver.
Yeah, driver, although I think their idea about
Expressive.
thoroughly is when they are satisfied.
Right.
Repeating the same task over and over. That's definitely that driven analytical, hates that feeling of being held back. They become quite resentful of things that are too predictable, too whatever. Lots of specific rules and regulations. I will say, other than those that they create themselves and impose upon the rest of the group. They're perfectly happy with those. Sentimental thinking, yeah. Expressing their emotions, yeah. Being diplomatic when convincing others, that's hard for them. Not monopolizing a conversation. David, I think you're right. That feels to me very much like a driven analytical.
Yeah.
Others, anyone else want to weigh in where you think that might overlay on the change grid? So we're saying they'd be right here. Again, I'm starting off with wondering if all of these learning styles take place down grid, period. So then it's just a question about where might they end up leaning. Now, so I think that's resonating. Now, the thing that isn't resonating is I don't really know that a driver, no, I'm going to say that. Up until 20 seconds ago, I was wondering whether or not a driver was abstract in their way of thinking versus concrete. And then I was reminded that one of the key characteristics of the driver energy is that they are all about the big picture and don't like being burdened by the details. Do you guys remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. And so if I think big picture really is more abstract,
Yeah.
and then that's okay, because then the analytical is handling all the concrete stuff. So I think they both have an appreciation. Let's go back to that diagram. I think both the analytical and the driven analytical have a strong appreciation for structure. I mean, look how they're rating their ability, 10, 11, 12. So they're very much have figured it out. They don't think it's particularly difficult. So this is where processes and procedures and routines are established. And if I go all the way down grid, this is where they become more like I don't want to say a practice. So instead of it being something that they're working on developing, this becomes more like the order of the day. They're, they're just working the process and probably not even realizing that they're working a process. It's just that much a fiber of the way they do things, the way they operate. That would probably be great joy to a concrete sequential. Edie, you're the resident authority on Gregoric, so does that feel right?
Well, I just keep trying to compare it. And Ann Herman did get back to me. She was on vacation and she just wrote this morning. But you're putting it on the change grid, and I keep, anything abstract is going to be cerebral, and the limbic is more the concrete. So in terms of using that as a reference, it's upper and lower. I think a lot of times people just say right and left brain, but it's upper and lower.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll be talking about that. HBDI is one of the other models we want to take a look at. And so it'll be great to see how they overlay, where they overlay, because we've done Herman brain dominance before. And without giving anything away, I suspect that we are likely to find that all these learning models are going to resonate with one another. Otherwise, someone would have challenged them and, one would have fallen by the wayside by now. Okay, anywho. So let's take a look at these other two possibilities. Look how concrete random. This learner likes experimenting to find answers. All right. They like taking risks. They use their intuition. They like solving problems independently. They learn best when they're able to use their trial and error approaches, able to compete with others, and given the opportunity to work through problems by themselves. Okay. Oh, so right now, you've only got two left now. It's either going to be an amiable energy or an expressive energy as the secondary energy. If I want to try to get this to overlay on the analytical quadrant.
That sounds more expressive, T.
This sounds a little bit more expressive, experimenting to find answers. Now that would resonate because this area of the change grid, if you just look at the ratio, ability is only viewed as being moderate to moderately high. challenge is still not all that high, but they're still figuring things out, fine tuning. Again, this is the home of true artistic creativity. So no doubt there's a lot of imagination being pulled into play here, but not, if we said, where does structured problem solving live on the chain grid? There is a place up grid, but it's more of an intervention kind of a situation. A problem exists and we have to do something to get in there and deal with it. That's more of an up grid, kind of a catalyst. I'm talking about down grid. Assume there's no grand deadline that's threatening everybody. This energy would like to really explore and apply their artistry, their creativity to whatever it is they're trying to figure out. Taking risks, yeah, I suppose. They're willing to play with things, solving problems independently. Yep. So what's hard for them? Restrictions and limitations. Yep. Formal reports.
Yep.
Yeah. Routines. And again, if I just go back here, it's because this location on the change grid, those routines are only at the earliest formative stages. So it's in power apathy that strong routines end up being built and, formalized and all that kind of stuff. So here it's still in that wet clay kind of mode. Redoing anything once it's done. I honestly have to say that's probably true for anybody in the analytical quadrant. But I'll tell you, an analytical and a driven analytical probably have even less tolerance for redoing something once it's done. But I would say there's an element of that pushback, that frustration, that whatever, throughout the entire analytical subquadrant. Okay, showing how they got an answer. That's interesting. Because they use their intuition, it's very possible that the concrete random or the expressive analytical may not fully understand exactly how they came to the insight, understanding, whatever that they've come up with, because they're tapping into things beyond the limits of the 5 physical source senses. Edie, is this resonating?
Yeah,
concrete.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Edie.
No, he can give his. I'm just
Okay.
humming. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, David, go ahead.
I was just going to say the concrete random sounds a lot like a salesperson.
I think there's certainly on the technical sales side of things, I think they could do a really fine job. If it's a schmoozy sale, maybe not so much, because they really don't do, although they do like to compete with others on their own team. That's interesting. Yeah. I think you're right. Showing how they got an answer, choosing only one answer, having no options.
Yeah, keeping detailed records. What salesperson in the world keeps detailed sales records?
Yeah, only enough to satisfy
the boss.
Exactly, who we believe has a similar personality is never going to look at him anyway. So
and
I
on
think
the HBDI, that would be a lower right brain, a limbic right brain person.
A limbic right brain. Yep. Okay. That'll be
They're
interesting.
the cheerleaders, the salespeople, and I was just thinking about what you were saying about intuition, because my dad was extremely intuitive, only an 8th grade education, if that. But there were engineers that tried to figure out what he did with these steam engines and so forth. So it's interesting that intuitive people will do things and they have no clue how they have solved very scientific engineering problems.
Exactly.
They have no idea.
Well, and the nice thing is that if you compare a concrete random to a concrete sequential, very often concrete sequential struggle with problem solving because they're so locked into their rules, so locked into logic. And it may very well be that the insights they need in order to come up with the right solution are simply not available to them in the facts at hand. And they have to be able to make that more inductive kind of reasoning come into play. And the concrete random seems like they would be very comfortable moving into that. Yeah. So I think this idea about that resonates with the expressive analytical energy certainly could be spot on. So to finalize the whole thing, that would mean that the remaining quadrant has to be an amiable driver energy in order for it to balance itself out. It's the only option left. So, and right there, the first one, this learner likes to listen to others. Okay, that's an amiable energy right there. Bringing harmony to group situations, amiable. Establishing healthy relationships with others, amiable. Okay, focusing on the issues at hand. Okay, yep. They learn best in a personalized environment, okay, given broad or general guidelines. Okay, that would resonate because again, that amiable driver would be here on the change grid, that amiable analytical would be
Amiable
here
analytical.
on the change grid. So they're still recognizing only a moderate to moderately high level of ability. That means they view themselves as having room to grow, learn more, etc. So they may be very happy given general or broad guidelines because they'll work on figuring out whatever the next level of depth is in those guidelines. Able to maintain friendly relationships, yep. Able to participate in group activities, yep, that's fine. What's hard for them? Having to explain or justify things. Again, it may be because they don't really have that concrete sort of knowledge, skill, experience. So while they may not be as intuitive or using their intuition to the degree that the expressive analytical would, it still may be present because intuition is a skill beyond the the regular knowledge, skill, experience. Analytical analyticals and driven analyticals probably set aside their intuition because the preponderance of evidence is sufficient to support whatever action they want to take or decision they want to make. Okay, so let's finish this off. What's hard for them? Working with a competition, working with a dictator or an authoritarian, working in a restrictive environment, working with people who don't seem friendly, concentrating on one thing at a time. That's hard for them. Okay, yep. Giving exact details, accepting even positive criticism. Okay. All right. So can we all kind of see, well, that does kind of resonate with the amiable analytical kind of energy.
I would say so.
All right. So now here is the debate. Right now, we have confined all four of those to the analytical quadrant. If we were to look at HBDI, and we'll do that in the talks to come, I can tell you that the epicenter of HBDI is the center of the change grid. So if these are going to overlay on each other, that would mean that we'd have to relook at each of these, and instead of saying all four energies are explained in the analytical quadrant, then I would have to say, no, this one that we think is the expressive analytical may very well be an analytical expressive. And the one that we think is the analytical driver, scratch that, the driven analytical is actually an amiable driver. So are you guys kind of scratching your heads now, kind of going like, what?
Well, no, T, I was actually thinking that, particularly when you talked about the analytical expressive plotting. And so I was like,
all right, so let's revisit. Yeah, let's go ahead and revisit it and see how it might overlay. Now, I will tell you that whole expressive analytical versus analytical expressive, these are variations on the exact same thing. It's just about not the preponderance, the ratios of how much analytical energy versus expressive energy. Now, I'm okay doing what we're about to do because I think that all places on the change grid open up a possibility for learning to occur. But how that learning is approached and experienced and maybe expressed is different based on where you are on the change grid. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go back to the description we just went over of this expressive analytical and see if you hear more of an expressive energy or more of an analytical energy overall. Okay, you guys ready for this? Someone dropped off the call. So sorry. We've given them a headache. So I believe that would be the abstract sequential is what we basically said. Yep.
Was which energy?
This would be the, I should have written it down. This would be the expressive analytical. Wait just a second. Oh no, the abstract sequential was more of the outgrid, the driven, yeah,
Right.
the driven analytical. Yeah, we're going to have to really take a look at this because this opposite would not hold true. See, this one, if we're saying this one is outgrid, this one has to be, can't be in-grid. And right now it is.
Well, that on that abstract sequential, that's where I was leaning more towards analytical expressive, particularly when you're talking about someone who wants their point to be heard, and that seems to be something they're pretty adamant about. It's important to them. It's a highlight for them. So,
You know, the thing, Tim, though, it says able to work alone. Is that an expressive energy?
well, I guess for me, it depends on the degree of these bullet points.
Yeah.
If the first bullet point carries the greater weight, then that's got me leaning more to analytical expressive.
And I'll add to that, that if we're saying that the epicenter right here, the epicenter we're saying right now would be in the middle of the analytical quadrant. But if it actually is the center of the change grid, then I would say to you that in the center of the change grid, because we can practice that art of carrying detachment, we are all able to work alone. And I think that's the real thing that I include in here. They're able to work alone. That doesn't mean they have a preference for working alone. They learn best when they are able to work alone. They learn best when they're able to work alone. Interesting. Go ahead, David.
I see expressives as collaborating, as coordinating.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's kind of do it this way. I'll read the bullet point, and if you'll just tell me which of the four energies you hear. So they like their point to be heard.
Expressive.
Expressives do, and which other group like their point to be heard?
Drivers.
The drivers. Okay, so we've got those two possibilities, expressive or driver. Analyzing situations before making a decision or acting.
It's not the driver energy.
No, that's definitely an analytical energy.
Yes.
Applying logic and solving or finding solutions to problems. That is an analytical energy. They learn best when they have access to experts or references.
I'm still analytical on that.
I'm still analytical. Placed in stimulating environments.
That's expressive.
That's expressive. Able to work alone.
I guess anybody can.
Yeah, I mean, that's center of the change grid, really, but yeah.
But that's also where you've got your thinkers too. So I think that still have me as analytical there.
Yeah, probably the only one who really can't, energy that doesn't like working alone is the amiable energy. I mean, expressives want to be the life of the party, but sometimes they create the party in their head. So, maybe they can work alone. What's hard for them? Being forced to work with those of differing views.
That's well, no, I don't know.
See,
I was going to say it's expressive, but
yeah, because when I think of an analytical that isn't too deeply entrenched in their viewpoint, that's where a good debate occurs. So when I think about just put a whole bunch of analyticals together in a room and say they're all scientists, I think they could be, they're not they're not being forced to work with people of differing views. They may very well find differing views interesting because it helps to flesh things out, fill in the blanks. I mean, even this act of what we're doing right now, this is an act of working with someone of differing views. Yeah. So I kind of think analyticals are okay with that. Is an expressive energy okay with that?
No, it might be seen more as a challenge to an expressive.
Yeah. See, I think an expressive is by nature already very open to differing views. Unless they're up in stress, they just go like, we just have to do something. We're on the brink of destruction here. We can't keep having a party about it. So as long as they're not in that upward danger zone, I think they're open to these ideas. Too little time to deal with the subject thoroughly. That feels very
Expressive.
well. It's hard for them when they're given too little time to deal with a subject thoroughly. To me, that would frustrate which of the four energies. If you're not going to give me enough time to really, yeah, it would drive me nuts as an analytical. It's like, give me some time, people. Repeating the same tasks over and over. That frustrates analyticals. I think it bores expressives.
Yeah.
Lots of specific rules and regulations. What do you think an expressive's attitude is towards rules and regulations?
They'll walk. They're
just kind of going like, oh, please. Those are not designed for me. So sentimental thinking.
That's an analytical.
Yeah, be thinking sentimentally. An analytical getting sentimental.
I don't see that too much.
It's hard for them. Well, I can tell you, it is the sole reason why you will never see me have more than one drink. So, because I don't know why, but alcohol makes me horribly sentimental. I mean, we're like, everybody's my best friend, and it's just sick. So never. And now that I've said that, if you guys are ever with me socially, I know we're gonna go like, oh no, T, go ahead, have another drink. It's like, no. I know what it does to me. I become this.
So T, what is your favorite drink?
Margaritas is the thing I would be likely to be drinking if I'm drinking something. Otherwise, scotch on the rocks, good scotch on the rocks.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'll have. And it's interesting, since all of us are in this business, I don't really, or how about this? Long ago, I really hated scotch. But I would always ask if I was out at a business function with a client or whatever, I would always ask for scotch on the rocks because I knew that I wouldn't really drink it. And I'd always look like I had a glass that had a drink in it. And so people wouldn't be telling me to have more drinks. So I intentionally chose something.
What happened, T? Did you take a couple of sips and like it?
Well, over the course of time, a few little sips, you kind of go like, well, this isn't horrible. But bottom line is I'm just not someone who drinks because it does make me really sentimental. And I don't really like the stories that are told the next day. Oh, yeah. There you go. Everybody's my best friend. Okay. Pardon me. They don't like expressing their emotions. Well, an expressive loves expressing their emotions. Being diplomatic when convincing others. See, to me, an expressive is a natural born schmoozer.
Yeah.
So I think that is being diplomatic. If anything, it's probably the drivers don't like being diplomatic, and
I don't think analyticals
either, because they just find, well, why are we playing this game?
Right.
So the data is
lay out the facts and let's move.
Right, exactly. So I do kind of always thought that that whole diplomacy sort of thing lives more as the driven expressive or the expressive driver. Because usually if I'm being diplomatic, I'm still looking for an outcome of some sort. You know,
Mhm.
diplomacy kind of implies that I'm in a situation where others may take offense or may not like what's being said to them, and that would turn them off regardless of what the data shows. So I think that, again, that expressive energy combined with a little bit of that driver energy, and maybe calm down a little bit with some amiable thrown in just as the tertiary energy, would probably be a good place for a diplomat to live. And not monopolizing a conversation. I think the two places on the change grid where conversations are likely to become monopolized are by the overly what and the overly what.
Expressive.
Mhm.
Driven.
And driven. The
Mhm.
drivers like the sound of their own voice, and the expressives are just have so much energy they can't shut themselves up. So now I don't know if going through that as we just did is helpful at all in what we're trying to kind of work our way through. So but I do believe that this is going to resonate with a lot of different areas on the changer. Overall, I heard a lot of expressive stuff and I heard a lot of analytical stuff. Was the expressive stuff more powerful than the analytical stuff? If that's the case, then we would say that this lives at the expressive analytical spot
Hmm.
on the change grid. Otherwise, it would be an analytical so analytical expressive would be more expressive than analytical. Expressive analytical would be more analytical than expressive. So
Well, and they're in the power stress response state too, which
yeah.
yeah.
And so that would resonate with them, you know, wanting to take more time to make a decision. So they're feeling the situation might be pushing them, so they don't have enough time. So I think that that would be true for anyone in the analytical expressive all the way further down. All right, so for now, let's just say for the sake of the exploration, let's go ahead and say, no, we'll say it resonates up there well enough that we can see if there's merit in the others that are looking at it. Now, we would then need to say that the opposite of that would be the concrete random.
Right.
So abstract sequential is more upgrid, concrete random would be more downgrid. Does this describe the expressive analytical, experimenting to find answers, taking risks, using their intuition, solving problems independently? So far, so good. They're able to use trial and error approaches. They compete with others, given the opportunity to work through problems themselves. So far, this all feels like it resonates just fine. Are we in agreement?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep,
see,
go ahead.
I, for me, there's a little driver energy there, particularly when I'm looking at the focus on answers and results.
Mhm.
So this was one of the ones that just had my brow going,
Right. Well, now we could always say that that's taken care of by this tertiary energy, which
okay.
would be present for both of those. Things can always lean out grid. So if we're thinking like there is that element of it, then I think that's what the tertiary energy is supposed to contribute. Those little subtle nuances that just say, well, if you look literally, it's not possible to be in the center of this spot, of this subquadrant. You have to lean one way or another. And so I like that idea that it might be this is really more of a driven, expressive, analytical kind of an energy there. Yeah, okay. And I do think that that driver element is kind of implied anytime the word learning is even used, right? I mean, we're learning something on purpose, perhaps is what they're talking about here. So
But
what's hard for them? Restrictions and limitations, formal reports, yes. routines, redoing anything once it's done, detailed records, showing how they got an answer, choosing only one. Yeah, these are all very much resonating with that expressive, analytical, general area with a little bit of driver thrown in. Yep. You agree, disagree, David, Edie?
Yeah, it sounds right.
Okay. Now that would mean we only have these two remaining ones. One's got to be slightly out grid and one's got to be slightly in grid. So that would either be concrete sequential or abstract random. Now, I think we've already established that abstract random has a lot of amiable energy in it.
Yep.
Right? So they like to listen to others, all those kinds of stuff. They don't really like competition. That to me feels very much like an in-grid energy. So that would then mean that concrete sequential has to be out-grid. So let's go through these and see. You'd be more that driver energy. By the way, you're an amiable driver. But nevertheless, see if this resonates with you. You like order, logic, following directions, some predictability. I would say if I'm a driven driver, I like other people following directions and behaving predictably. So yeah, but again, that driven driver energy is still a little bit subject to change without notice when they're in a position of authority and in the danger zone. But when I think about an amiable driver, the amiable driver, again, when we talked about the C-suite, this is the operations officer. And so they like to, does an operations COO like to have a structured environment?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That they can rely on others to complete their tasks.
Absolutely.
Yep. Faced with, they learn best when they're faced with predictable situations, can apply their ideas in pragmatic ways. Yep. What's hard for them? This one's debatable. Working in groups, I would say that as they move further and further out grid, they have a greater and greater difficulty working in groups. But if they're barely tipping their toe into that expressive driver area, you know, just tip over a little bit here, I think they're okay with groups. You know, but it's not going to hold true as they move further out. Maybe it's only true while they're inside of the green circle. So I'll say that's partially true. Discussions that seem to have no specific point. Anyone know a COO that doesn't like waste time being wasted? Yeah. Working in an unorganized environment, by definition, they're supposed to be creating the organized environment. Following incomplete or unclear instructions. This is all. Working with unpredictable people. Dealing with abstract ideas. What do you guys think? If you're an operations type,
Yeah, they're not into abstract. They're into factual, concrete, executable, solid plans.
Right. Okay. And so as we work our way around this questions, they don't like questions with no right or wrong answers. They don't. Okay. That would then mean that, and I'm going to go ahead and type these in, that concrete sequential, where's my text tool? I do wish the whole world would just stop changing how these things work. Concrete. Oh, spell it. Oh, good grief. Properly. Sequential. We're saying that tends to live a little bit more on the out-grid side of things. And then let's go ahead and put in abstract sequential. And we said the abstract sequential is actually more up-grid. And notice I'm not going all the way up or out, or just kind of trying to keep things pretty close to home. And so that would mean that, let's go ahead and take this, copy and paste it again. I should have done these in advance, sorry. Abstract random is the opposite of that, random. Abstract random. Abstract random is the amiable energy. Abstract random. And that would mean concrete random would be downgrid. Concrete random. Now I have to tell you, those words bug me. They bug me because I agree that outgrid and downgrid are both more concrete. And abstract is more upgrid and ingrid. But I just feel like the expressive energy is more random than it is sequential.
It is. It is.
So
I definitely think it is too.
yeah, we're going to need to just play with this a little bit more. And again, maybe what we actually have to do, and this is very often the case when we're doing this merging of brilliance kind of exercise, is we have to say, all right, this is getting somewhere. It doesn't feel perfect. It doesn't feel resolved quite yet. But let's go ahead and move on to Herman brain dominance, see how it ends up resonating. What just happened here? No, I wanted you to be there. Thank you. And then maybe that will give us some refinement. I can also say that we might want to go deeper into the definitions that Gregoric came up with and see if that moves us around anywhere. Concrete sequential to me feels, and again, I know I'm babbling, we've still got 6 minutes. Concrete sequential feels very right to me if we can confine it to that subquadrant. But I believe that as we move out into any of the, to this outgrid danger zone, sequential is going to become random again. No, is that right? Okay, you guys become driven drivers. You are the supreme, all-powerful manipulator, victimizer, runner of the show, and maybe sequential still holds true because you want things done in a particular way, and you don't want anyone to deviate from whatever process you've put together.
Generally, anything sequential is going to be more left brain. And if it's lower left brain, it's more the anal retentive people that label their pencils and have color coded underwear, that kind of thing.
Is that coming from the concrete contributor or the sequential?
Concrete. Yeah,
That's
it's
concrete.
limbic and concrete. And then the upper is going to be that same sequential stuff, but it's more the accountant. It's more abstract. So that's
Okay.
where it's so abstract. Yeah.
Yeah. And see, I guess I'm just trying to say, I'd hate to confine all these to the downgrid quadrant because that would imply that learning only occurs downgrid, where the truth is that learning is the process through which one ultimately ends up downgrid. So that means learning is happening everywhere on the change grid. But
doesn't that bring in the different learning styles and why teachers need to speak different languages, so to speak? Because
and see, that's where it may very well come in, Edie. I think you're right. Because one thing that I know as we start looking at the other models of learning is that visual, auditory, kinesthetic. I can tell you that visual learning tends to happen much more upgrid than anywhere else on the change grid. And downgrid is much more kinesthetic. In the middle is balanced learning, an appreciation for all, but auditory would be the one that's probably the one that's exercised the most when you are in power, you're listening as you're learning.
And 4% of the population have an equal balance of all 4 quadrants. They call it a perfect square.
Yeah.
Where they can, resource all aspects of their brain pretty equally.
In which case they would probably be in the center of the change grid, because that's where we said, we did Herman brain dominance before, we said that's where that whole brain actually lives. I think that came up because when Linda and I got our results, it showed that you put the two of us together and we have a whole brain. but I'm only
Mhm.
one half of it and she's the other half. So we have kind of like different HBDI brain maps. But if you overlaid them, they kind of cover the range. So maybe that's part of it as well. But anyway, I guess I'm just saying that this is feeling right. So whether we do a deeper dive into this model or we go on to Herman brain dominance or one of the others, ultimately we're going to come back to this and see how are these all resonating and how do their definitions that they are using help us to better understand what
Mhm.
this means. Because look, we're interpreting what the words concrete and sequential mean to us, or we are looking at the very basic things they gave. So for example, I'll read you, this is what concrete perceptions are. When you are using your concrete ability, you are registering information through your 5 senses.
Mhm.
You are dealing with the obvious. You are not looking for hidden meanings or making connections between ideas or concepts. That
T,
feels very right. Yes, David.
I was just going to hypothesize that learning happens in the red circle, but outside of the red circle, it's reaction.
I think you're right. Or in the case of being in downgrade in the red circle, inaction. But
Yeah.
you're right. These people are being compelled by something internally or externally to simply react to what's going on in that moment in time. And that definitely holds true. And we already know people that are in grid and down grid are maybe thinking the same things, but not necessarily expressing it.
Right.
Abstract perceptions, this quality allows you to understand ideas, qualities, and concepts that cannot be seen. Now that would hold true when someone perceives themselves as having a low level of knowledge, skill, or experience. They probably are turning more to the intuitive way of looking at things. So that would hold true. You're using your intuition, your imagination. You are looking beyond what is seen to the hidden meanings and related concepts. Now, the only thing that I would say about that is that what is probably more true based on how we've laid them out now is that these individuals are lacking in sufficient concrete data. So it's not like they have the concrete and are adding the abstract. I think they're using abstract as a substitute for concrete.
Mhm.
Edie, does that
Yeah,
resonate?
and actually they are very creative and they don't want to be bothered with facts and figures
Right.
and they get defensive and denial. I mean, they kind of make
Yeah.
up their fake
Right.
news.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder, do they not care about them because they don't have them? Or do they have them and not care about them? Or is it,
Mhm.
a blend of those? But that would hold true if we said that on the range of ability, we go from being abstract to concrete because of the quantity of knowledge, skill, and experience I have, or the quantity of resources. Down here, they're by definition low, and up here, they're by definition high. So I can certainly see how abstract and concrete would map. But sequential versus random, this is more interesting. Yeah. Okay. That would say the people that are upgrid and outgrid like sequences more than, are we saying that an expressive like sequences more than an analytical?
I can't imagine that. That
That
doesn't
does
feel right.
not feel right to me.
No.
So we're going to need to look at some other models just to see if we can get that sorted out. Just so I can complete this, we still have, we're 1 minute over, but let me give you these. This is their definition for sequential ordering. This preference involves the organization of information in a linear step-by-step manner. When using your sequential ability, you are following a logical train of thought. That might be true for an analytical expressive, but it sure isn't true for an expressive expressive.
Mhm.
And that would then give more energy to what David was saying, that these people are just reacting, they're far upgrade. Now listen to what they say for random. Random is interesting. This preference involves the organization of information in chunks and in no specific order. When you're using your random ability, you are able to skip steps in a procedure and still produce the desired result.
Mhm. But that's where intuition comes in too.
Yeah.
The that level of random.
Yep. So, So that's what we have to resolve. The horizontal seems okay with me. In-grid and out-grid, that seems okay. But do we need to switch? Here's the only problem though. That would then move concrete up-grid. Concrete's not up-grid. Concrete's definitely down-grid.
Yep.
So that would then say for this to work, that someone who is truly a master of whatever their content happens to be, master of their situation, whatever it happens to be, do not need to follow something step by step, but can get to a desired outcome by skipping steps. So that would imply that at a certain level of expertise, you can streamline things. That would feel accurate to me.
I agree.
Yeah, yep. Okay, all right. So I think we've
You
made
know what,
progress
Dee?
here, but
Dee,
yeah.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
Anne was on vacation. I think she's back because she just wrote to me this morning. What if I invited her to one of our calls? Wouldn't that be good?
Well, what would be even better is for you to invite her to all of our calls.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
this is the circle of brilliance. Having a background in ChangeWorks might be helpful, but it is not a requirement. This series of calls is open to anybody and everybody who's in the realm of human development. And we'll learn from them, and hopefully, because they're going to keep hearing us talk about the change grid, and they'll learn about what we do. They'll learn about us.
Okay.
So yeah, by all means, please invite her, because we'll pick up on this on next Tuesday's call. I think we'll probably want to take a look at Herman brain dominance next. And then we'll come back to this and see if they're helping one another.
Did you know they're right up in Lake Lure here in North
I did,
Carolina?
yeah. I knew they're a
Yeah.
North Carolina based thing. And is Herman still alive? 'Cause
No,
he's
he
gotta be.
died. He
Okay,
died
yeah.
quite a few years ago. But see, the good thing about Herman brain dominance, he was working at GE.
Yeah.
So he had millions of dollars of support in research. So I kind of trust his more.
That model's been researched to
Yeah.
death. So that'll be interesting if we go like, well, then let's use Herman brain dominance as the primary source for understanding learning on the change grid. And then we'll see how Gregoric is refined by Herman brain dominance. Yeah. Okay. Other comments, questions, thoughts?
No, thanks.
Yeah,
Good
thank you so
discussion.
much, everybody. And we'll pick up where we left off on Tuesday. So thanks. Bye for now.
Thank you
Bye
so much.
now.
Bye-bye.